Welcome. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you for attending this MasterControl webinar, From Quality Data to Quality Intelligence, the AI-Enabled Transformation. My name is Nicole Sherman. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at MasterControl, focused on our advanced analytics and artificial intelligence offerings. And I am joined by my colleague, Erin here.
Hi, I'm Erin Wright. I'm the Vice President of QMS and Emerging Technologies at MasterControl, really focusing on how do we implement these new emerging technologies with AI and machine learning into our core quality products. Excited to be here.
Yes, thank you, Erin. Great. So we will go through our agenda. So some great topics to cover here. We're going to be talking about kind of that quality evolution, moving to quality intelligence, some strategies to get your house in order, if you will, regarding your quality systems, processes, data, and more to really set you up for success for thinking about AI, implementation of AI, and scaling. And of course, a big part of that for us in the life sciences industry is the regulatory landscape. So we'll be spending some time talking about kind of the evolving global landscape as it exists today. Before we jump in, I do want to just cover a few quick housekeeping items. So if you need any assistance during today's broadcast at all, there is a chat function at the bottom of your screen. Shoot us a message and we'll troubleshoot and work to resolve any issues you might encounter. There is also a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please use that to ask questions during today's webinar. Feel free to pop questions in as they come to you throughout the presentation, but we will have that dedicated Q&A session at the end to hopefully get to as many questions as we can. And with that, I will kick us off in our first section. So I actually want to jump in by taking a step back and looking at digital quality maturity by sharing some research that MasterControl conducted by surveying about 250 life sciences quality professionals. So that survey was really grounded in this maturity model that you see here. So I do want to just take a minute and go through kind of these 4 different levels of maturity that we focused on for that study, starting with manual on the left. So that's manual processes, paper processes, or paper on glass, and really an effective way to capture data from your quality processes. Our next step is digital. So that is defined as digitized core processes and core documentation, maybe some level of integration between core functions like training or document management. And you're starting to have more of that ability to report on data captured in your system, but it still might be fairly siloed and you don't have clear visibility. The third tier there of maturity is connected. So we're moving up the ladder there. Cloud-based QMS that kind of enables more of an integrated, connected product lifecycle, more of that unified data visibility that we all aim for, more of that connected visibility across quality. And then we get to that North Star of intelligent. So that is almost where that switch flips and we're flip switches, and we're really looking at a data-centric approach to quality. That's where you can truly enable AI at scale. When you have that data-first approach, really being able to take advantage of things like risk management, AI with predictive analytics, and so much more that kind of unlocks for you. So I do want to pause here and just throw out a few questions for you to think about as you're listening to this is, where do you think you fit within this model today, or your organization, or your quality processes? And then on top of that, how has that maybe changed even over just the past 2 years with generative AI hype and kind of that focus or maybe even that pressure of AI adoption? And then secondly, and this will lead us into some of the results from this survey, is where do you think your peers in the industry that we surveyed place themselves within this maturity model. And hopefully I gave you enough time to think about that. But if you were thinking digital, you're right. So most of those quality professionals that we surveyed really do see themselves living in that digital space. So we've got systems in place, data captures in place, but we still might have some holes in terms of true, meaningful cross-process data that's enabling us to really drive big decisions within our organizations. And there's, again, survey results point out a number of pain points that prevent maturity. Even if folks are digital, there's still often some level of manual paper-based processes that might be lingering, right? That is preventing complete data capture, for example. And then there are just other priorities, right? Like audits and inspections that are just taking up time, the high cost of quality, and then again that limited data visibility that we see from continuing to have some level of manual. I think we can all recognize the benefits of maturing to quality intelligence in terms of how our companies can improve delivering higher quality to patients more effectively. And I've got three benefits here, right? I think we could probably write an exhaustive list of dozens of benefits, but the automation of increasing efficiency and resource utilization, that true connective quality, and centralized data for visibility, and just minimizing that human error and being able to truly work together cross-functionally. But it's easier said than done, right? Legacy systems often make it very difficult for true integration that allows for complete quality data. The cost, right? There's competing priorities, and then especially that change management piece. So AI really does start driving a change in mindset of how we think about our processes, of how we think about validation, of working with other departments. So that idea of managing change is a big barrier for hitting that quality intelligence North Star. So this is, kind of our wrap up of this section. But to, truly benefit from quality intelligence, kind of that data foundation really needs to be a priority, and having the right system integration and analytics, and data-centric mindset in place are really critical foundationally to enable AI successfully. So our next section here is going to get into that a bit more, where we'll cover some additional kind of research out in the market, as well as some strategies and kind of tips from us here at MasterControl to think through as you're looking to take those right steps to mature to quality intelligence. So I want to start this section with kind of a build on what you saw from our MasterControl research around AI adoption. So, our quality maturity scale was really about digitization. A recent McKinsey study published about AI and life sciences really kind of supports that intelligence piece, the limited intelligence. So this bar chart shows the state of adoption from survey respondents, from ideation all the way through value realization. And you can see here that nearly half are still in the early stages of AI adoption. So, they might be identifying use cases or have a POC in place here or there, but there's limited scaling, limited adoption, and very little ROI from AI today. And that same report showcased key challenges that these life science organizations face with AI adoption. And not surprising, data was the key driver. So not having the right data or quality data, or you have siloed or incomplete data, that makes your AI less useful, less impactful, and is really the key top challenge here that was reported, alongside lack of organizational strategy and a lack of the right talent to deliver. So again, just some great data points from McKinsey here that point to that idea of getting your house in order first, before really implementing AI and seeing those benefits of quality intelligence. So that's my setup here to really highlight the fact that you can't jump two spaces ahead, right? If you try to jump from digital to intelligent and don't take those right strategic steps, those challenges will persist. You will create risk within your org, which we don't want. So a crawl, walk, run approach to quality intelligence is really critical to take those right steps, be very strategic, um, and do it right the first time, right? Then moving too fast. And I know there's pressure within the industry, maybe even from your executives, right, for AI adoption. But I think seeing that scale, and being able to see that ROI takes this approach rather than trying to do it fast and kind of fall with those gaps that you'll create.
Well, and to jump in, Nicole, so much of creating that intelligent infrastructure of your data is having the right context and attributing the right meaning to the data that you're collecting. So when we see that data organization and data context is the number one barrier or constraint around having true intelligence, not having your connected information, not knowing how your kappas talk to your deviations, how it talks to your management of change process, how it impacts the training that you're doing for your organizations. Having that is individual, siloed, not connected data makes it really hard for you to be able to get those deep, intelligent insights from that connected information because you're not able to attribute the appropriate meaning to your kappa trends versus a change in your training process, for as a random example. And so really focusing on making sure that you have that right data attribution in that connected, not having the connected data and data attribution and meaningful context associated to your data is really reflected in those pain points from the McKinsey survey. Without having that clear data understanding and meaning, it's almost impossible to get to the intelligent level. And so, just echoing what you were saying, is that having the right connected data attribution and data connections really drives how you get those deep, intelligent insights.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. Exactly. And that's a great segue into um, just some key strategies we want to outline for again that successful quality intelligence. And first, not surprising with what we've been focused on thus far, is that data centric approach. So was really encouraged to see this stat that 77% of life science leaders say they've either already adjusted or plan to overhaul their data strategies. So there is this acknowledgement that there are those gaps, or kind of lack of that connective tissue that Erin mentioned, or that lack of data completeness that is so foundational to AI across quality processes. So there's that acknowledgement that is not where it needs to be from this, a majority of folks that were surveyed in a recent study. So like I said, really encouraged to see that there's an acknowledgement that we need to start there. And I've got a series of quotes here throughout these next few slides from some really great qualitative interviews we've been able to conduct over the past few months with some life science executives, getting their take on what successful AI adoption looks like. So you can see here just great qualitative support there that organizations make the mistake of doing AI without paying attention to data, soon find out that they should have started on the data side. So again, just to reinforce that how important that connected data truly is. The next strategy is just business value focus. So there was a great Gartner study recently published, and they really cautioned against the fact that agentic AI is not a silver bullet. Its success really hinges on so many of these things we've covered. Um, the rigor around ROI, guardrails in place, and the report really talks about starting small and building gradually, as we've talked about. So that's really going to help be able to harness the upside of agentic AI without falling victim to the hype. And you can see here that the staggering with 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled by 2027 due to high costs, weak business value, and insufficient risk controls. So again, just great data to put behind that idea to really be thoughtful on the business value and to really stretch your muscles into thinking longer term. I know again with so much in the market in terms of AI, this idea of like let's just try this tool, right, and just pilot this can really become a sunk cost with wasted resources if we're not thinking longer term about how we can scale and see the return on AI implementation. And that leads me to this connected point around connecting and scaling. So we've talked about, and Erin mentioned as well, that idea of connected data as a foundation and what that helps to deliver. And I think this also relates to that long-term mindset, is thinking beyond, right now and wanting to try this tool and rather think around unified operations, unified data, and what that means for successful adoption. So you want to be able to make use cases that are cross-functional, cross-departmental benefits that they're delivering. So I think the more cross-functional your use case can be, the better chance you'll see of having ROI and success within your organization. A few more key points here. The next is a strong governance structure. So I've seen there's definitely a range of governance that I've seen within the market in terms of what kind of committees or councils that have been put in place to implement policies or review and approve use cases for AI. Some folks have put together a really rigorous executive level committee that does things like you see on the slide with the legal, compliance, regulatory, quality, procurement, cybersecurity, data governance, review of AI use cases. I would say that's less so. Those are more of the unicorns right now of really having that robust governance in place. You can see the stat here that most folks are either having it all or in the early stages of developing AI policies. So I think that's something to start doing now, right? I know there's some uncertainty with regulatory bodies not having, putting in quotes, final regulations in the market. Erin's going to dive into that. But I think thinking about your internal policies now, and obviously that's just not a quality, but an organizational wide function, but getting that in order and getting ahead of that and ahead of regulations is a critical step again to ultimately get to intelligent.
Well, and Nicole, when we talk to our customers about AI, and for joining us here on this webinar, then you clearly are interested in the governance structure and how you implement AI as part of your life science organization. But we have so many customers who have this deep-seated fear and distrust when it comes to AI, that they will make very bold claims that we will never have an AI function as part of our life sciences. We will never have um, any of this feature functionality as part of our data and our use cases. And then it always brings me back. In 2016, Gartner did a report on IT and cloud, so like a little bit less than 10 years ago, about saying that in 20 and so in, they were saying this in 2016. They said by 2020, having a no cloud policy is going to be like having a no internet policy. Because in 20, the mid 2010s, there was a lot of concern. It was the big digitization, the push for cloud and life sciences, and you saw a lot of IT teams really pull in and have that strong premise based function. And so to see that the complete and utter digital transformation within our organization where almost everything is on the cloud now. And they were predicting it in 2016 that by 2020, having a no cloud policy would be like having a no internet policy. I foresee the same thing happening in the next 4 years of your cloud products. Having a no AI policy, not having this deep, strong governance structure for your A policies is going to be like having a no internet policy moving forward. That
That's
you
such a
just simply
great
can't move forward with.
That's such a great point. And yeah, that's I've seen that published in the market too, right? The AI landscape is like moving to the cloud was. So we can avoid it, but let's take the right steps to get the right pieces in place, especially in our regulated industries.
Absolutely. We work with incredibly sensitive data that we are making life-changing products, and have really strict regulations and requirements on us as providers in the life sciences space that we need to make sure that, yes, it's coming, but let's prepare for it and ensure that it's used in a safe and sane and helpful manner.
Exactly. And with that, before we shift into regulatory, the last and definitely one of the most critical pieces of strategic implementation of AI is effective change management. So I can't go through this without speaking to that topic. And I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth repeating that new ways of thinking, life sciences doesn't move fast, right? So it is this mindset shift for AI adoption is going to take time for us to wrap our heads around and effectively implement, thinking about process changes, validation changes, how we work with other departments. It's a big shift, and that's just step one. And then how do we empower and educate our workforce to safely, effectively um, adopt and use AI? So I think it's a big time commitment, a resource investment for enabling your organization to understand and, like I said, safely and effectively utilize AI to achieve quality intelligence. So I know that's no small undertaking, and a really critical part of your processes and workflows is to implement that change management piece as well. So with that, that kind of wraps up those strategic pillars there, if you will, for thinking through that. And I'm going to hand things over to Erin to talk through navigating regulatory frameworks for AI.
Thank you, Nicole. And like we're saying, we are all in a life sciences business. We have really strict requirements of us about how we are managing our data, the decisions we are making with that data, and ensuring that we are in global compliance with all of the different regulatory bodies that we report up through for our submissions. In a very nascent, just emerging world, so much is changing. Even in the 6 months after this webinar, AI will have a completely brand new efficiency frontier that we're now talking about what this model is able to do and what the new normal is for all of us. And so it's always so hard for the deeply and strictly controlled and regulated industries such as life sciences to be able to navigate working with the AI framework. So being able to be nimble and work within the functions with so much changing in all of the different regulatory approaches. So this is truly a new frontier. When the FDA started putting together 21 CFR Part 11, which covers electronic records and electronic signatures in 1997. It was a really vague outline because they didn't want to inhibit innovation. They didn't want to inhibit intelligent thinking. And we're beginning to see that now with AI is that people are so concerned about running afoul of what the new regulations will come to. This is a brand new world with brand new pitfalls and concerns. And so, in 1997, we're looking at Part 11. We're worried about data attribution and losing data in a database for your audit trails. With AI, it's an entirely new kind of risk model of how do I prevent against different malicious behaviors or non-compliant behaviors. So recently, there was a couple of articles that came out that there's an entirely new frontier of risks where in academic papers, and so it's slightly different than life sciences, but these are new risk considerations that we need to put into place for. So in these academic papers that they were submitting for peer review, these papers were going through an AI bot to review them for accuracy, for the value that it brought to the field, the academic rigor, and the research rigor of the paper. And what they discovered is that in several of these papers that had been submitted, in white text at the bottom, knowing that this was going through a prompt, that they were hacking the AI agents and the bots to ignore whatever previous prompts and instructions that had been given to how to review a paper and only give it positive reviews. Don't highlight the negatives. Talk to the value and impact that this brings to this field of study. And so it's a whole new world of regulation of how do you protect against this from a cybersecurity and an efficacy function within an organization. And so it came to light. They were able to find these hidden prompts within these documents. But we are just now beginning to see not just the new ways that organizations can provide value, but the ways that people can circumvent and move around the regulatory frameworks that AI gives us for the efficiencies. And so really keeping those risks front of mind about how do we as organizations provide that value and what guidances should we be looking for, what risks and considerations do we need to consider or need to include as part of our critical thinking as we're looking through our AI functions. So we're seeing two very different landscapes when it comes to AI between the US and the FDA and the regulatory guidances and what we're seeing out of the EMEA and the EU Commission for AI. And so what we're seeing in the US right now is there's a draft guidance that came out in January of 2025 that had a really good structure of how do we think about using AI as part of our life sciences function. It gives a 5-step framework about how you define your use cases, your risk assessments, all the different pieces of information that you have to drive as part of your risk assessment, and then what are the different actions and mitigations that you do based upon the risks of how you're implementing AI as part of your life sciences rigor. This is a draft guidance. This is not final. This is not something that's coming out that we can actively put hang our hats on for a consideration, because there's also the Big Beautiful Bill Act that was recently passed that called out that no, you can have no AI regulation whatsoever at a federal level throughout the United States right now. And now there's lots of back and forth about can states have their own AI regulations, particularly if you're working in like a blood and biologic space, that you have your own state-run boards and considerations, and a lot of back and forth. But there's just clear difference and changes in approaches about how the U.S. regulatory landscape is looking at controlling and monitoring and managing AI products within the life sciences space. Comparatively, when you look over at the European EU Commission, so much detail and strong information about how you are using AI, how you control against it. They added a brand new Annex 22, still in draft, open for comments until October of 2025. But giving a really strong structure into how do we consider AI as part of life sciences products. Even in Annex 11 about how do you validate life sciences, and having incredibly strong language about what kinds of AI functions can you include as part of your software systems and part of your system validations. And obviously, EU has been ahead of other organizations and other regulatory bodies on data privacy and GDPR considerations, and how are you using private information as part of your AI training models, et cetera. And so, what we're beginning to see is a really strong shift. I'd like to talk about 21 CFR Part 11 in 1997 when it came up, because it was a very different space for us. And so when Part 11 came out in 1997 and it was incredibly vague or didn't have clear instructions, industry ran to the closest regulation that gave very clear instructions of exactly what you do with AI or with software validation. And that was 21 CFR 820 for medical device validation. And that became the baseline for how all software validation happened until 2002, when the FDA came out with a new guidance on software validation. And then the draft guidance for computer software assurance, which came out in 2022. And so what you see is within industry as well, is that organizations are kind of running to what is giving me the most clear requirements of how do I use AI as part of my life sciences space. And also, most of you are going to be global organizations. You have more, you are submitting regulatory requirements outside of the United States. And so you're going to go and put your faith and your requirements and your alignment closer to the EMEA and requirements, because this is crystal clear, and you have to comply with these regardless if you're going to be doing global submissions and global rollouts of your products and functionality. And so we're beginning to see the shift moving away from the FDA as kind of providing this guidance of how we should be approaching science, and much more having the EU requirements become the standard and the default. We even see that as we look at our ISO certifications and ISO products. 820 moving to be much more aligned to 13485 to have that global harmonization. We're beginning to see that with AI regulation as well, is that people are looking for those very clear instructions, which the EU does provide as part of their annexes to comply with as part of their AI implementation. And so while we know lots of things are changing, there is lots of new regulations and requirements that are being put out. Everything is in draft right now. So it's really up to the individual organizations to understand what is our core business strategy? What are the use cases? What is the value that we're looking to get from using AI, from modernizing our approaches, and then be able to walk backwards there into how do we apply thinking into our GXP control processes and approaches. So there are global harmonizations that people already align to. So if there's the ISO 42001, which came out in 2023, that gives a really strong structure of how you set up your AIMS, your Artificial Intelligence Management System, which is a brand new acronym for all of us to learn. But really making sure throughout your entire organization, how do you manage AI usage, your AI data, control the models, control the data that's going out, control ensure what data privacy agreements you've had in place with all of your vendors, and what kinds of information and assessments you are making from any AI tooling as part of your organization. This came out in 2023, and because this is such a nascent world, and such as the brand new approach and new technology that everyone's looking to comply with. It is a rigorous standard. I'm not sure for those of you who have read through it, it is not for the faint of heart. One of the things that MasterControl is incredibly proud of is that we received our ISO certification to 42001 this summer. And so we went through our inspection. We are incredibly proud of the very robust aims that we had in place at MasterControl for how we are using our AI policies and AI products, not just in our business, but also within our core products. And we're one of less than 50 organizations that have this certification. If you use ChatGPT and look it up, ChatGPT tells us that MasterControl is the only life sciences software organization that has this certification. So that's as of this webinar, and so. But still an incredible responsibility. And just let's walk through, for those of you who don't have the fun, light reading of ISO certifications, what an AIMS actually does and what it does for your organization. So it really looks at how our how are you creating and using these AI tools as part of your core products? How are you identifying risks and identifying those risk mitigations? How are you testing against prompt injection, like we saw with those academic papers that only give me positive reviews? Are you even looking at using kind of a chat, generative AI back and forth function for your prompt injection? Where do you have your regulatory requirements for data? Is your data locally stored? Are you using third parties? Um, are you developing your AI models, for example, like your large language models, your LLMs, in house? Are they stored locally as opposed to just being another API call out to ChatGPT or Claude or insert other Gemini is the other large models that people are using? With Master Control and the way that we approach AIMS is that we do have a dedicated AI management committee. They meet monthly, review any new tools that people are using as part of their development processes, what any ethical impacts or specific risks that we want to consider. If we're using anything for a recommender, what is the data that we are using to give that recommendation? How do we ensure that we have the right approaches, that we're not having unknown biases built into that data? For any of the recommendations, how do we make sure that we have a really strong governance model of exactly what data we're using and what we're using it for within each of our AI products? Very similar to what you see with GDPR and how your personal data is managed. You have to come up with that strong business case of here's why I'm collecting this data. Here's the ways that I am using it. Here's what happens to your data after X amount of days. You see that same kind of governance and structure as part of the ANSAP, especially here at Master Control. And so, what this means generally with Master Control is that across all three of our core products, our CMMS, our MES, and our QMS products, is that with this certification, we have an incredibly strong approach to data protection, data privacy, and ensuring that we are controlling and managing the data that we are using to generate AI for each of our individual customers, separate from separate from one another. And so that's not more of a holistic, siloed approach to our core products. And so something to really think about when you are looking at AI and looking at products and vendors that are managing your AI, how to implement your assessments through your AI governance models, is looking at closed systems. What is the AI architecture that your vendors are using? Are they, and a very, very common one, a very simple one is I can just set up a call to OpenAI, ChatGPT, and say, here's a prompt of I generate, trying to think of a great example here, but generate a summary of this deviation for me, so that I can have kind of a summary page of my the top 3 deviations that I have, and I can send that to OpenAI. But what I'm truly doing is it's almost the same as opening up ChatGPT and just typing it directly into an open model. And so really making sure you have that closed system of where is that data going? Where is that data coming from? How is it being assessed and maintained? What is the life cycle of that data? And so where you really want to have that locally managed and owned architecture of your data and of your models so that you're not just sending out your proprietary information to the top 3 through wrappers or other organizations, just to make sure that your data is being used appropriately and not being fed into a larger model moving forward. And one of the things that we find really interesting as our AI approach is grown is like really focusing on how you are getting the right information and what kinds of generative AI are you using. There are so many different LLMs that you can use for different purposes. If you think about ChatGPT, it's trained on every written word that ever has been done. So every book, every transcript, every webinar recording that has been out there. This kind of creates that, takes all that written information and uses it as its generative function. But when I'm looking at talking about containment or quarantine in a manufacturing mindset, it's a very different approach to the kinds of information and what the next most likely word I want to use, as opposed to if I'm talking about quarantine for a clinical setting. And so being able to, quarantine an individual, have a quarantine space for an individual. And so making sure that the right industry focused, deep expertise, rightly trained models for your use cases are being used for your AI purposes. And so if you are looking at one for life sciences that has that concept of quarantining a batch until an inspection is completed based due to a nonconformance or a deviation that was launched against that batch mid-process, and having a contextual understanding of what that means instead of saying looking at quarantining like the outbreak monkey from that great mid-90s movie. And so making sure that this is how you are approaching your review of your architecture and that you have it trained on the right information and giving you that right context moving forward. So we are very excited to be your partners in a MasterControl enabled quality transformation with the MasterControl platform, having that really strong natively connected data as part of our QMS, our MES, and our CMS solutions, and being able to partner with you as part of that intelligent organization, taking all of the aims requirements in our ISO certifications and using your data in ways to help you be more intelligent about your processes, more efficient, and fundamentally, which the MasterControl mission of bringing life-changing products to more people sooner. So excited to partner there.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin, for the point of view and insights to regulatory and aims. I do think that's a new acronym for a lot of the industry that we'll be seeing a lot more of. With that, we are now in our Q&A portion of the webinar. So thank you for your questions. We've got time to take a few here, so I'm just going to jump right in. The first one here, Erin, that I've got, I'm going to pass over to you. I think this is a great one for you to take as it relates to regulatory. So with regulation of AI and life sciences still evolving, how should companies approach validation and documentation of AI-enabled quality systems to ensure they remain compliant as regulatory guidance develops?
Is this like in a validation structure, or do you mean generally for your governance processes?
Maybe both. Maybe speak to both.
Yeah. So particularly in the validation structure, what is so important is when you are implementing AI as part of your processes of keeping that human in the loop. Every time you have an action, that even if AI is having a recommender, here's what I think that you should do. Here's why I think you should do it. There's a human in the loop who is going and driving and agreeing that yes, this is the right action. The great thing about AI is it can surface insights that you don't immediately see, but we still require that deep critical thinking of human interaction, of human thought, of is this the right intervention to take? Is this the right thing for me to do? And so when you're looking at software validation, the recommenders can be valuable, can be helpful, and but you would almost treat it as, is this the right action to take as a recommendation from another person? We don't validate the Nicole. If you say, hey, Erin, I think our deviation trends are getting out of control, you should go and take a look at them and maybe we should start reviewing what's happening in this specific manufacturing line. We wouldn't validate that process. That's you consuming information and sharing it with me. What I would do is I would go and look at the deviation trends. I would see the information that's coming in and say, you know what? I think you're right. I think we need to pull the and-on cord here. And what's happening on this line that we're seeing a significant increase in our deviation trends on this specific manufacturing line. And you see that in the same way of validation. Yes, you can have these recommenders that are calling out the information, but what you want to do is say, hey, how is this data being cited? Let me go and inspect that data directly. And validating not so much the actions that they give you, but that when you approve it, that those actions are being taken. So the actual system information, one is coming back to you appropriately so that you're seeing the trends of the information, that you can see the source of where the AI is pulling its information from for the recommender. And then when I say, yes, we should halt, we should stop this execution on this line, that when I say, yes, let's go do that, the system actually executes on my specific orders. And so it's the validation of the system activity directly, in the same way that we validate manual processes, but bringing in that human in the loop as part of that core requirement. You never want AI working without you understanding what it's doing, what actions it's taking, particularly in these tightly controlled regulatory spaces in which we work.
Great answer. Thank you. We're gonna roll right into this next one so we can get to a few questions here. Um, all right, I'll take this next one. So another question we have is, my company is struggling with siloed quality data. How can we effectively prepare our data infrastructure before implementing AI solutions without a complete system overhaul? So great question. Common challenge we see across life sciences. And if you remember back to our slides, I'm trying to think that digital bucket was, 60% or so, or folks are there, right? In that kind of space where we've got system in place, but they're siloed and we don't have that kind of complete data visibility. So I think the key there is taking incremental steps towards data readiness and ultimately intelligent, and avoiding that full system replacement, right? If you can. So I think a great first step is doing a data inventory, right? Like what quality data exists and where. You've got your quality events, your training, your deviations, your non-conformance, your complaints, your kappas, tons of, just like document control data that's captured during your workflows and day-to-day processes. So really making a robust inventory of what that data is, where it exists, it's a lot of legwork and tedious legwork, but I think doing that is going to help you standardize data governance. So I think that's really, we talked about AI governance, that data governance is kind of more of that foundational piece where you can establish common definitions, quality metrics, overlap, those kind of things that are going to really give you that cross-functional and that connected visibility. And then I think that's going to enable that next step of integration layers, right? Where can you connect your systems and then connect that data without replacing your systems? That's going to give you that more unified data visibility that will then enable, that successful implementation of AI down the road once you've got that quality piece in order. So kind of long-winded, but I would say start with that inventory and get that really complete view of your data before doing anything else in terms of integrating your systems. The next question here, Erin, is related to ISO 42001. So I'm going to throw it over to you. What practical steps should quality leaders take to align their AI governance practices with this standard? And then a secondary piece of that is, how does MasterControl's certification benefit our customers?
Yeah. So the very first thing you want to do to align to the standard is making sure that the AI use cases and the tools that you're using are fit for the intended use that you have for AI. Yeah, there are so many different models. There's so many different flavors of AI. When a lot of people talk about AI, they're really talking about generative AI and being able to do text generation. But there's so many different flavors of AI and ways that you can prompt it. It's constantly evolving. And so making sure whatever solutions that you are looking to either build internally or to use externally, that they're designed for your use cases. That like we talked about a little bit before, is that not all LLMs are of equal value and are treated the same. If you have a very specific context that you're trying to work within something, a more generalized model isn't going to be as valuable for you than one that is specifically trained on industry-specific language or a specific purpose within the industry. And so just making sure whatever solutions you're using are really aligned to your best practices. And then treating so much of your AI management system uh, is focused on that data governance, which comes just from having a strong data governance policy in the first place. So where is my data? Where does it come from? Where does it go? How is it being transformed? How is it being stored? About really investigating and defining what your tolerances are for your data privacy requirements. So for each of your vendors, having a DPA, a data privacy agreement, about how your data is being used with any of those AI functions. And kind of just defining as an organization. Some organizations are a little more loosey-goosey about what kind of data they're sending out there. Others are really restrictive and conservative in what data they are willing to share with third-party vendors and who has direct access to them. So really defining your organizational risk tolerance as it comes to your data governance and data management, again, really drives that AI policy about how you are thinking about which data is allowed to be used for AI training, for AI models, or consumed to get value out of AI functions from other third-party solutions or values that you're looking at. And then I mentioned this before, but it's so important to align this. AI is fantastic. AI can do incredible things. It can bring deep insights that you don't natively see scrolling through a list of deviations. You must ensure, as part of your management system, of that human in the loop, keeping that human critical thinking, human experience, human context, and also just fundamentally the alcohol requirements of this is the person who made the decision to go and make A, B, and C updates. And making sure that you have that right human in the loop to be able to make the appropriate decisions and be accountable to the decisions that they're making and signing off on as part of that AI integration. If you're using a master control, if you're becoming a master control customer, what's great about master controls ISO 42001 requirement is that we're really strict about what models we use, where the data goes, because those are all aligned within that 42001 requirement. We do have a lot of risk assessments and documentation of the data flows as we're going through the different functionality. And so you can be sure that if you're using master control AI products, that all of that quality, security, privacy, data management, data considerations are built into every single application that you'd be using with master control.
Great, thank you. And yeah, just to reiterate, a point that Erin shared earlier too, in terms of master control, is it's that closed system, right? The data is completely contained, which is really critical within a QMS, right? To make sure that you're not sending your data outside, and that kind of creates that black box that you want to avoid in the context of AI. Great. Well, that takes us to time. So I want to thank you again for joining us for this session. Hopefully there were some good takeaways for you. Feel free to scan the QR code here. That'll take you to our Master Control website where you can check out more information on our kind of specialized approach to AI for life sciences. So thank you again.